biggest bulking mistakes that I have made personally and you can learn from, and these are the ones that you should avoid if you want to maximize your gaining phases, okay? So, firstly, starting to fat. Reality is, if you are going into a gaining phase, you will need to be in a calorie surplus, okay? Which means that you are eating more energy than your body needs, and therefore you will be adding weight over time. In alignment with progressive training and obviously that calorie surplus, you will be building muscle, but during that time with excess calories in the system, you will also be putting on body fat, okay? You cannot prevent this. There's very, very rare instances where people will not gain body fat while gaining muscle. And if you're anywhere into your training career, a year plus, then you're really, really gonna struggle not to do this, okay? So here's the reality, okay? If you're already starting too fat, where do you go from there? As I explained, we need a surplus of calories, okay? So if we're already 20% body fat, 25% body fat, and then we're gonna put ourselves into a surplus and increase our weight and increase our muscle mass, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to 30%, 35%, and then just get so far away from anywhere that is actually conducive for muscle growth, okay? For males, basically, once you're over that 20% body fat, your ability to build muscle in comparison to gain fat is definitely skewed in the realm of more fat gain. Whereas if you can get yourself down to a lean, responsive set point, which is what most people should start from, or everyone should start from if you're gonna go into a gaining phase of around 10% ideal. If you can't get there, 12%, then you give yourself a runway to actually go into a surplus and push up your body weight, okay? So in order for you to have a successful growth phase and not have to get off excess amounts of fat next time that you diet, you need to get lean first, get responsive, and then push your body weight up. And I have this conversation with people all the time, at the gym that I work out of, they're very heavily muscled individuals, but they're about 30 to 35% body fat. And I say, look, you need to lose the body fat first before you can go into a surplus. And they'll start a diet, and then 2 weeks later, they'll come back and say, oh no, stop the diet because I'm losing muscle. It's like, you're not losing muscle, you're just losing fullness, and you've still got that massive stomach to get rid of. And if you never commit to that process of dieting down, you're never going to get rid of that stomach, okay? So a little bit off tangent there, but if you're starting too fat, you're going to limit your ability to build muscle, you're going to limit your ability to spend time in a surplus, which is what we need for building muscle, and you're going to limit your ability to make great progress, okay? Second thing is avoiding the scales and pictures. So whenever people go through a fat loss phase, they'll be taking pictures every single week, they'll be jumping on the scales all the time, because you get that instant reward from a fat loss phase. You can see your body changing on the daily, especially as you start to get leaner, and you can see things start to happen, right? Whereas when you're in a bulking phase or a gaining phase or a improvement phase, whatever you want to call it, as you push your body weight up and as you're gaining muscle, your body composition is actually going to look softer. So you're going to look worse throughout this phase. So even though you're gaining more muscle, you look like you have more muscle when you're 5 kilos lighter or 10 kilos lighter. And that is the head fuck of the gaining phase, right? Because you are literally improving, but looking worse. So it's very, very hard to understand that there's muscle there, it's just under that little bit of body fat that you've gained, okay? So whenever you're in a surplus, people will stop taking progress photos and they'll bury their head in the sand, or they'll stop weighing themselves. And then they start to get a little bit lazy with their calorie intake, and they start overeating their calories by a lot because they're not keeping themselves accountable. And next minute, they're gaining 2 kilos a week. And I can assure you right now, if you're gaining 2 kilos a week, a very minimal amount of that is going to be muscle tissue, and a lot of it is going to be fat tissue, okay? So when you're in a surplus, you still need to be keeping these things in place. Weighing yourself multiple times per week, so that way you can track a trend and see where it's going. And you don't want to be gaining weight too fast. Anywhere from say 250 grams to 500 grams per week is probably a perfect rate of gain for most people. And then of course you want to be taking those photos. You take those photos, you can visually see, hey, I'm putting on body fat way too quick here. I need to, reduce my calories or maybe increase some output and things of this nature. So the worst thing you can do is bury your head in the sand and avoid the scales and avoid pictures in a bulking phase. Third one, this is one that I've been very guilty of. In my second last bulk, I was chasing scale weight hard. I really wanted to see 88 kilos on the scale because I'm a 5'2", very, very small individual, and I didn't care. Well, I did care what I looked like, but I was more invested in getting my weight up than I was at actually watching and monitoring my body composition, right? And what we need to understand is muscle growth is a slow process. Again, if you're gaining a kilo a week, not much of that is going to be muscle, unfortunately, okay? Unless you're a genetic freak or you're a beginner, you know, to gain 2 kilos of muscle a year is amazing. Like, that's a lot of progress, right? So what we need to understand is muscle growth is slow. And if you are just chasing a weight and not paying attention to the visuals, or not paying attention to your training performance, or not paying attention to how much body fat you are accumulating, you will get to that end weight. Let's say it's 100 kilos, because that's what a lot of people will chase down. And then you'll look at yourself and go, holy shit, now I've got to get 25 kilos off to be in shape, okay? Chasing scale weight is the worst thing that you can do. So just remember, you know, weight isn't everything. A number isn't everything. The goal should be to get to a certain weight that you've been before. And if you look a lot better at that weight, if you're leaner at that weight, then you know you've gained more muscle, right? So it shouldn't be to chase a weight, but it should be to look better at a weight that you've already been. And then you know that you are improving, okay? Look for quality muscle, not fat gain. Just keep thinking about that. I want to put on quality muscle size throughout my bulk. Next one is routine and laziness, okay? Again, when you're pushing your body weight up and when you are eating excess of calories and things like this, you know, for me, a gaining phase is actually harder than a deficit phase, for the most part, right? When you're in the back end of a contest prep, when you're 4 to 6 weeks out and you're peeled, you know, getting up and going to the toilet is a drama, right? But also, when you are pushing food hard and you're being maybe at a scale weight you've never been before, you're carrying a level of muscle you never had before, you know, you are going to run into issues. Like, you're going to feel a little bit sluggish because you're slamming so much food. You're going to be feeling a little bit tired because your sleep might start to suffer a little bit, especially at the back end of a push-up. And you will see that you start to get out of routine and you start to get a little bit lazy. Like, let's say, for example, at the start of your gaining phase, you were doing 4 cardio sessions a week. Well, typically, a few months in, I might start doing 3. And then a few months in, I might start doing 1. And then next minute, there's no cardio. And then next minute, your step count goes to shit. And then you are losing all of this expenditure while still increasing your food over time, and you're becoming a lazier individual and you're accumulating body fat even more. So even in a gaining phase, you need to hold yourself to a high standard and you need to keep in that routine. And it doesn't matter how sucky it is, like keeping in your daily movement, making sure that you're getting your steps in, 8 to 10K, you know, going for walks after your meals to start the digestion process, and keeping that movement in, keeping that level of fitness in, keeping that cardio in, is going to, you know, lead to a much more, a much greater gaining phase. And then the last one is excessive cheat meals, okay? If you are in a surplus, a 300 calorie surplus, and you are having a cheat meal every second night, and you're not accounting for those calories, banking calories, taking calories away, and you're eating in excess of calories, you know, with a massive surplus, you know, more often than not, you are going to gain fat quickly. When you gain fat quickly, you're going to ruin your insulin sensitivity, and you're going to start partitioning nutrients really, really poorly, and this is going to lead to more fat gain over time, okay? So we see this at the back end of a prep where food is really, really high, or back end of a gaining phase, food gets really high, people get lazy as, and, you know, they'll start eating 2 meals and then replacing it with, you know, off-plan meals more frequently, etc. And we also know that, you know, excessive cheat meals are never going to come with the most great macronutrients available to them, the most nutrients available to them, and typically they're going to be highly processed foods, okay? And when you're eating that sort of stuff, we can see, you know, some really bad detrimental effects to like inflammation levels in the body, like I said, insulin sensitivity, nutrient partitioning, all of these things. So if you are someone who is excessively, you know, eating over your calorie intake or getting in too many cheat meals, you are going to, you know, finish that surplus a lot fatter than you wanted to, with a lot less muscle than you wanted to, because your training and stuff will go down the drain as well. And, you know, you're going to limit your time that you can spend in a surplus. You know, the longer we can spend in a surplus, the longer that we can build muscle. Okay, so these are the 5 mistakes that I would really try to avoid within your gaining phases. I won't even call it bulking phases, right? You know, you want to start from that lean set point. You want to keep that accountability with, you know, scale weight and photos. You want to focus on building quality muscle, not just seeing a number on the scale. And you want to keep that routine and structure, and you want to factor in off-plan meals, of course, every now and again, but macro track meals at home are going to be way better. And sticking within your calorie intake is going to be much better as well, because the reality is, you know, you want to grow muscle, you want to be in that surplus for a long period of time, and if you are making these mistakes, you're going to be dieting again in no time. So hope this helps today. Drop a comment if you like this video and you want to see more like this, and don't forget to subscribe.